Toothless, Scene 4, The Park, Part 1. Headlights shined ahead, piercing the night and tearing open a small pocket in the fog of darkness. The night was thick, causing the side windows to look opaque. No windows were in the back of the bus. Looking at the headlights outside the windshield was the only reminder that anything existed beyond the darkness. In the quiet hum of the moving bus, Franklin watched the others hang articles of clothing to dry as they found different locations in the bus to recuperate. Albrecht was sitting farther down in a row of seats that lined the side of the bus. Bizarria sat in the opposite row a few seats over. Franklin grabbed a first aid kit from the front of the bus and sat next to the old man. "Been a crazy run tonight, hasn't it?" The doctor began carefully examining the mortician's wounds. "Yeah, very unexpected." Albrecht was deep in thought, then perked up with an idea. "Hey, I got a mental moxie strike. Do you have any things that might be able to help with that?" "Well, I got this skill called Mind Palace. Not sure if it'll work, but I could try using that, I guess." "Yeah, let's try it." Franklin placed his hands on either side of Albrecht's head, bowed his head, then closed his eyes and focused. He envisioned a palace in his mind where haunting thoughts and troubles could be trapped and tamed. He focused on this vision and attempted to transfer it to Albrecht. Franklin, Mind Palace. 5. Success. Albrecht, 1 mental moxie recovery. "Wow!" Albrecht blinked with surprise. "That is insane! And it worked! Thanks!" "Never thought I was going to be the healer in this group." Franklin opened the bus's first aid kit and began to address Albrecht's physical moxie strike. Albrecht laughed softly. "Yeah, a lot has happened that I wouldn't have thought." "Hey, dude." Franklin's tone changed. He sounded out of character, but more so than usual. "This whole thing is amazing. The way it can read our minds and practically react at the speed of thought." Albrecht nodded in agreement, watching Franklin mend his wounds. "However, it's also horrifying. I know I'm not this character, this Franklin person, yet look at me. Here I am, suturing and patching everyone up like it's an old pastime. How am I able to do this when I shouldn't know any of this stuff?" Albrecht rubbed his chin in thought, but did not answer. Franklin leaned in and spoke in a hushed voice. "This thing, this system, it's filling in the details I shouldn't know. I'm not a doctor, yet this system makes it possible for me to do doctor stuff. It's like this thing is filling in the cracks with stuff I shouldn't know and making it possible for me to know. And all that might sound cool, but there's something terrible hidden inside it." Franklin paused, unsure how to proceed. When he continued, his eye twitched and his hushed voice was tight like a frayed rope. "The system is creating memories that I did not put in my head, that should not be in my head. It's like remembering a dream I woke from, but I haven't slept. I can almost remember going through medical school, but that's not the worst of it. Franklin, mend. 3. Success. Albrecht, 1 physical moxie recovery." Franklin closed the first aid kit and leaned back deep in the seat beside Albrecht. The doctor frowned deeply, and his thoughts weighed heavily on his words. "This whole adventure thing is a horror, right? Do you know why it's a horror?" Albrecht raised an eyebrow, waiting for the doctor to answer the question. "It's a horror because I'm losing my mind. I don't know which memories are really mine and what memories are being filled in by the system. It's getting to the point where I'm not sure who I am. I mean, am I Franklin or am I me? You're not supposed to remember everything in your life, but the natural cracks and gaps in my memory are being filled artificially. I don't think I know who I am. I can't help but wonder if I ever knew." Franklin picked up the square metal first aid case and turned it in his hands a couple of times. He stared at the red cross, then at the blank backside of the white tin case, then back again. That's the true horror of this place. The doctor spoke distantly. It's the horror that I may have lost who I was and will never be that person again. We will forget ourselves when this is all done, and there will be nothing left of who we used to be. Franklin looked to Albrecht. We won't exist. Is that not the worst horror of all? Maybe, Albrecht pondered aloud. Yet, maybe that's just the kind of horror I need in my life. The mortician stared ahead into the darkness of the window across from him. Maybe I don't want to remember who I was. Maybe I'm tired of being broken and would like to find out what it's like to be something different, something new. They both silently stared ahead at the blackness of the window, gently rocking with the rhythmic movements of the bus, feeling the low hum of the engine. As Albrecht continued to stare, he noticed his reflection staring back from the window. It was featureless, cold, and ill-defined, but something was there. Something looked different. As he leaned forward to get a closer look, a system message popped across his vision, interrupting his focus. 3 upgrade points awarded. Error. System error. Error unrecognized. Attempting to diagnose. Rebooting. 3 upgrade points awarded. System error. Error unrecognized. Attempting to diagnose. No. Thank you for playing. The adventure will now continue. Curly suddenly sat up in the back of the bus. The back was one long bench the cowboy had laid down and stretched across. His clothes, boots, bolo tie, and belt were strewn across various seats and bars in the back. But when he sat up behind one of the seats, he was still wearing the white 10-gallon. He pushed his hat back and looked pointedly at the rest of the group. You guys saw the system messages too, right? Bizarria asked. Curly nodded while smoothing down his bristled mustache. It's just a glitch. It's going to be okay. Albrecht's voice was detached and void of comfort. I don't think it will. The doctor was sitting next to Bizarria, tending to her wounds. I can't log out anymore. What? Albrecht responded with genuine surprise and a tinge of betrayal. You tried to log out? Yeah, I did. The doctor pulled another roll of gauze from the first aid box. The menu's whacked. The logout is gone. Franklin, mend. 4, success. Bizarria, 1 physical moxie recovery. The Magi's eyes met the doctor's as he secured her bandage. Bizarria was searching, pleading for something in Franklin's eyes, but the doctor could only look down and move on to heal her other moxie strike. Albrecht closed his eyes and pushed the options button. The menu was badly glitched, rendered almost illegible, with scattered broken pixelated pieces. It was impossible to choose most things in the options menu. In the top right, where the logout button should have been, were chunks of pixelated garbage. Like the remnants of a detonated 16-bit grenade, the logout button was gone, unusable. Looking to the upper left, Albrecht was relieved to see the hero sheet button was still accessible. He quickly accessed his sheet to see how bad it was glitched. Name, Albrecht Eisenberger, Moxie 000, HD 1, UP 7. Hero defining traits, mortician, attentive, curious. The last trait, Toothless, was scratched out. Attributes, nimbleness 4, knowledge 4, focus 2. Skills, dodge D4, investigation D2, dissection D2, cut D4, subskills, intelligent dodge D4, gear, mortician toolkit, clothes, Eisenberger family toothbrush,
Abilities. Hyper-integumentary examination.
The hero sheet appeared with minimal pixelated interference. His unspent UP gently glowed at the top of the sheet, informing the mortician of potential upgrades for his attributes and skills. Albrecht opened his eyes and met Franklin's grave stare from across the bus. Franklin sighed tremulously and looked away. Franklin, mend. 3, success. Bizarria, 1, physical moxie, recovery. The doctor patted Bizarria on the shoulder, letting her know he was finished mending her. He quietly walked to the back of the bus to tend to Curly's wounds. A few steps up led to the back of the bus, where he walked down an aisle that divided rows of 2 pairs of forward-facing seats on either side.
"Oh, come on, dude. Seriously?"
Franklin cried out.
"What?"
Curly asked innocently.
"I don't need to see all this."
Curly jumped up and whooped loudly while shaking his hips. The cowboy had stripped down to his white briefs and 10-gallon, leaving the rest of his body happily exposed. Franklin fell back into one of the empty seats to escape the cowboy's gyrations. The group laughed amidst their groans as Curly performed a small jig down the aisle. At the end of his performance, he winced in pain and quickly sat back down so Franklin could start mending him. The cowboy leaned back, pushed his hat over his eye, and let the doctor work. Franklin, mend. 3, success. Curly, 1, physical moxie, recovery.
"Seriously?"
Curly cried out, leaning forward with eyes open, thumping the back of the empty seat in front of him.
"There was an option to turn off battle stats this whole time?"
Albrecht blinked a couple times and looked to Curly, utterly perplexed by the outburst.
Yeah. I hate battle stats,"
grumbled Curly, leaning back again.
"All those numbers in my eyes? Just kill the thing when it's dead. I don't need to see all those numbers and words."
Albrecht shrugged.
"So turn it off." "Bad icing on this bad cake, little amigo. That option's glitched too. Can't log out, can't stop seeing the numbers. Looks like this horror just went to a whole new level."
Franklin, mend. 2, success. Curly, 1, physical moxie, recovery. With the group mended to the best of his skills, Franklin sat alone in a forward-facing seat and stared despondently at the blackness outside a nearby window. Bizarria's eyes were closed and her head was tilted back, but she looked too tense to be sleeping. After a moment, she raised her head and looked to Albrecht. "Since we can't log out, how do we get out?" the Magi asked the mortician.
"We finish what we started,"
Albrecht said with a shrug. He then happily produced the Eisenberger family heirloom.
"I've got my toothbrush, so we just need to get to the end."
Bizarria felt she could spit venom at the mortician's despicable toothbrush. It was the cause for all this insanity. Instead, she swallowed her bitter words, laid her head back, and again closed her eyes.
"The narrator broke the system."
The bus driver's voice was clear and carried easily across the bus. It was like a wrecking ball that collided through the built-up walls of emotional silence, drawing everyone's focus to the front of the bus.
"I don't know how you're supposed to get out of here, but I know where you need to go to finish this adventure."
"Wait, did we defeat a boss?" Franklin asked. "I thought we had to defeat a boss to finish this."
"The system may be broken."
The friendliness of the bus driver's voice felt odd.
"But you don't need to defeat anything. You just need to make it out alive."
"Did we defeat the underboss in the water?" asked Albrecht. The bus driver chuckled.
"I do not think defeat is the right word."
Albrecht twisted his face and shook his head skeptically at the response.
"I'll still chalk it up to a win."
"How many upgrade points do we need to increase our max moxie?" Franklin rubbed the twitch from his eye as he looked to the group with his other eye. "Bizarria, maximum moxie strikes upgrade to 4. 10, Bizarria answered as she opened her eyes. "That's what I just finished doing. Now I have 4 moxie. 10 UP per moxie. Okay, I'm good. Franklin closed his eyes. Franklin, maximum moxie strikes upgrade to 4.
Where's this bus taking us?
Asked Curly as he examined the dryness of his clothes. I don't know. This adventure is so random. It might be a mountain. It might be some barracks. It might be a bar. Franklin snickered as he finished rubbing the twitch from his eye.
Yeah, it might be a dance club.
Albrecht laughed.
It might be an evil bus driver,
Curly said, raising his hands and waving his fingers, mocking an evil grin.
This bus ride might never end.
Everyone stopped and stared hard at Curly. Despite being in underwear and a cowboy hat, the others clearly did not appreciate his humor at that moment. Curly shrugged off their stern looks and went back to checking his clothes.
You're going back to the beginning,
answered the bus driver. Oh, no, moaned Bizarria.
Hey, Magic,
Curly looked over Bizarria's head.
Bessie, you died, right? What happened?
She squirmed and fidgeted, keeping her arms and legs crossed. Hidden drops of water leaked out from her clothes, making small pools in her seat and on the floor below. She looked away from everyone, trying to hide the teardrops that welled above her cheeks.
Hey!
Curly pushed through the awkward tension while sliding his arms into his uniform shirt.
Are you upset you didn't log out when you had a chance?
There was nothing, Bizarria said in a harsh whisper.
What?
There was nothing. No continue, no second life, not even a thank you for playing message. Just something like a coin of dark and light tossed into a void. Bizarria spoke firm and loud, turning to face the cowboy. Nothing happened when I died. I didn't go back to a character sheet. I couldn't get out of this cursed adventure. I could not do anything but drown. Have you ever drowned to death? Curly shook his head. She turned back to face the front of the bus. Her stare became lost in the bright headlights parting the darkness that covered their world. I was in the dark, cold, alone, and then I died. It was beyond words. It was terrifying. The group sat in quiet deference as the bus gently rocked in its journey, its white noise almost palpable in the moment of solitude. Bizarria shivered, wiped an eye, and glanced back at Curly. She managed a slight smile. Finish putting your pants on. No one wants to see all that. Curly smiled and did another little jig, swirling his pants in the air over his head, eliciting a short burst of laughter from everyone. The cowboy then proceeded to put his pants on and button up his shirt.
We are coming near the end of your trip,
the bus driver called out over his shoulder.
So let me do a quick recap of your adventure thus far.
Everyone turned to the bus driver and listened.
This adventure began when Albrecht lost his toothbrush and teeth in one swift moment. He gathered up a few friends, or is it still acquaintances? It's somewhat hard to tell, but I believe these individuals are the closest you've come to having friends. Regardless, they have helped you, and together you have found the toothbrush.
As the bus driver spoke, memories of their journey flashed through their minds.
All of you have had a nightmarish time finding this toothbrush. You've been through a haunted park, a nasty junkyard with a dentist chasing you, and escaped a flooded underground cave. Still, you found the toothbrush and must get to the adventure's end. Now you're on my bus, hoping to escape this nightmare.
The bus smoothly slowed to a halt. The driver put the bus into park, took out the keys, and turned in his seat to face the 4 companions.
Well, this is your chance to escape. We've come to your last stop.
The bus driver opened the bus door, stood, waved farewell, and then exited the bus.
Wait!
Albrecht called out, chasing after the bus driver. Only the fog of darkness could be seen outside the bus doors. A thin layer of fog lined the ground outside the bus and began to creep into the first step. A muted silence was carried by the darkness outside. Albrecht stepped back into the safety of the bus.
"The driver's gone. What did you see out there?"
asked Franklin.
"It's all black."
"Huh. Well then, I guess I better get ready to die." Franklin set down the empty first aid tin. He looked at the red cross on the white tin box, then flipped it over so there was only white. Bizarria shifted uncomfortably as she peered through the window behind her.
"We should be able to see something,"
muttered Albrecht as he backed away from the creeping fog outside the bus door. "Maybe it's a glitch," suggested Franklin.
"Hold on. Check your options menu."
Albrecht stood still and closed his eyes.
"There's something about sight here, and it's not glitched out. Try checking it."
"Got it." Bizarria opened her eyes and looked out the window.
"I can see something now." "It's still black for me."
Franklin's eyes were still closed.
"Go to the Advanced tab," responded Albrecht.
"Oh, wait," Franklin said excitedly, then opened his eyes. "I can see it now."
"Yeah."
Curly was looking out the windows from the rear bench seats.
"There's another street lamp and a bus stop over there."
The security cowboy was fully clothed in the back of the bus. He stood, straightened his hat, and cinched his bolo tie. Unholstering his revolvers, he gave them a quick twirl, then reholstered them. Chest puffed out, hands on hips, feet shoulder-width apart. It was a stance he had practiced often. The cowboy smiled wide and massaged a curl in his mustache.
"Let's do this."
Curly confidently strode to the front of the bus, past Albrecht, and paused as he looked out the door. He peered through the fog and darkness, nodding to his confidence, then stepped outside. Everyone else looked to each other, silently asking who should go next. The mortician smiled and nodded encouragingly to the doctor. Franklin did not move from his spot. The lights inside the bus flickered.
"We need to move quickly."
Albrecht glanced up at the lights in the bus. The old man exited the bus and surveyed his surroundings. The lights and darkness contrasted so dramatically that it appeared as though the ground did not exist outside the borders of light. A cone of pale light emanated from the street lamp over the bus stop, while the lights inside the bus helped drive away the nearby darkness. Only night existed beyond these light sources.
"I'm curious."
Albrecht looked down and around himself. A circle of faint green light surrounded him and pushed back the fog of darkness.
"Do I have a light or something?"
Franklin and Bizarria leaned out the bus door and acknowledged the green-hued light coming from Albrecht. The mortician spun around, attempting to ascertain the reason for his glow. It was coming from the fanny pack strapped around his waist. The mortician withdrew the toothbrush from his toolkit and held it high. The green light shined around Albrecht, creating a large sphere that dissipated the darkness in its wake. Franklin and Bizarria stepped off the bus and into the bubble of green light, noting it was big enough for the whole group to stand in. The fog rippled against the light from the Eisenberger toothbrush. Only impenetrable dark remained beyond its borders. Albrecht chuckled as he admired the light emanating from his toothbrush.
"If you had teeth, I would have guessed this light was coming from those pearly whites,"
joked Curly as he stepped into the light.
"Lucky for me, I do."
The old man smiled up at the cowboy, big and wide, but the bubble did not brighten.
"Come on."
Curly motioned for the group to follow him. With Albrecht holding the toothbrush high over his head, the group followed Curly to the bus stop. Behind them, the bus lights flickered, then went dark. The bus was gone. The street lamp created an angular column of pale light that hummed loudly, struggling to fight back the night's fog. Along the back of the bus stop was a row of tall hedges extending beyond the light column. The thick hedge wall invited a unique opportunity of tranquility for those who would enter, as it once promised to mute the bustle and noise of life outside. However, those same green-leaved walls held many secret whispers, and the companions knew those whispers were still haunting the grounds within. Franklin approached the hedge wall, observing the shiny yellow bugs that now infested all the park's greenery. The bugs moved in and out through the leaves and branches, and their highly agitated state caused Franklin to pause before picking one up. These bugs are the same one from before, but different somehow, the doctor noted.
I hope everyone has everything.
Curly was peering back at the darkness beyond the light.
I don't think we're getting back on that bus.
Oh, no! Bizarria exclaimed woefully as she patted herself down and checked inside her jacket. I lost my hat.
Dang it!
Curly stomped. Bizarria looked quizzically at Curly. Why do you care so much? You still have your hat.
But you had 2 gremlins in your hat.
Yeah? So?
Well, now I'll never get a chance to find out what happens when you have 2 gremlins in one hat.
Curly had a large, cheesy grin that nearly matched the width of his mustache. Bizarria's eyes narrowed, piercing the cowboy with her leer. I could stab you right now. Her voice was quiet as she slid one hand in her jacket. Curly chuckled, awkward and half-hearted, then turned away from the Magi's gaze to aimlessly inspect the nearby hedges. Bizarria took her hand out of her jacket and walked to the opposite side of the green light bubble. As the security guard wandered, he looked at the grass underfoot and nearby greenery.
It looks and feels like my park, but I've never seen this part of it before.
It's not your park. Franklin was stern in his effect. Curly raised an eyebrow and tipped back his 10-gallon hat.
What did you say?
It's not your park, repeated Franklin. And you're not a real cowboy. It's time to quit all this in-character acting crap. We just need to focus on getting out.
I know I'm not a cowboy.
Curly dropped his faux drawl and furrowed his brow.
But don't tell me what's real and what's not.
Open your eyes, man. None of this is real. Curly, strength versus Franklin, stamina. 4 versus 3. Curly succeeds. Curly backhanded Franklin across the mouth, hard and swift, but restrained from giving the doctor a moxie strike.
Did that hurt?
Yeah. The doctor held his mouth angrily and appeared ready to fight back.
If it hurts, then it's real enough for me.
Curly angrily walked past the doctor, but then stopped. He sniffed, took off his hat, and exhaled forcefully. His back was still to Franklin, and he spoke plainly.
Look, you know why I chose a cowboy?
Franklin shrugged begrudgingly, still holding his mouth.
Because growing up, cowboys, the good ones, they protected the herd.
Curly turned to face the doctor, but was looking down, hat still in hand.
Cowboys are loyal and they're good, and they're...
Franklin lowered his guard and looked up questioningly.
I've never been a good person. Never been a bad one either. Just, I'm just a person, a nobody. But here, I got a chance to be something, and that something is real.
Curly sniffed and wiped his nose, then faced the darkness.
I've never been more real in my life as I've been here, trying to be a good cowboy.
Franklin straightened, chewing the retort he held inside until it was a manageable size to swallow. He looked at the darkness with the cowboy, but could not see anything. The doctor turned to face Curly. Curly looked down at the doctor and smiled.
It's all a little ironic, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess that's one way to put it. Franklin's demeanor was somber.
Well?
Curly sniffed one more time and grabbed the handkerchief from his back pants pocket to wipe his nose. He looked to his hands, then to Franklin, and shrugged apologetically. Curly shoved the handkerchief back, put his cowboy hat on straight, and pulled out his best Western drawl.
Saddle up, Buttercup. because it's time to get you guys home."
Franklin couldn't match the broadness of Curly's smile, but he managed an upward curve on his lips. Curly turned and headed over to Albert while Franklin remained standing with his thoughts. The twitch returned to haunt his eye. Albert waved the toothbrush over his head, attempting to see farther in the darkness. There, in the hedge wall, was an opening. It was much larger than the one he had used when they started their adventure, but it was there all the same. Leaning into the opening, the mortician peered down the path, moving his toothbrush back and forth, vainly trying to see further down the trail.
"Looks to me like we're walking into a maze," Curly drawled as he came up to stand behind Albert. "But my patrols don't cover any mazes."
It was impossible to tell how far the trail led, but the hedge walls that lined either side of the path most certainly appeared to lead them into a maze. Bizarria and Franklin approached to stand behind Albert as well. Bathed in green ethereal light from the toothbrush, the four companions looked forward as the surrounding miasma of darkness stared back.